I stood motionless as they lowered Lucy into the ground. 45 years together, gone. The cancer took her quickly. During the service, my son Craig approached, documents in hand. His face showed no grief, only calculation. "Dad, you can't live alone anymore," he said coldly. "The nursing home has a spot ready." He thrust papers at me. "Transfer of ownership for our Los Angeles home." I signed without argument, my hands trembling. What Craig didn't realize: Lucy, my brilliant novelist wife, left me secret assets worth millions that only I knew about, a Malibu beach house and yearly royalties that could change everything. The morning after the funeral, I sat alone in the kitchen of the Los Angeles house, the home where Craig had grown up, where Lucy and I had spent most of our married life. The silence felt wrong. For decades, the gentle tapping of Lucy's keyboard had been the soundtrack of our lives together. She had been one of America's best-selling mystery novelists, though few people knew it. Lucy Madison was actually Laura Blackwood on her book covers, a pen name she had chosen to protect our privacy. "No one needs to know how well we're doing, Nolan," Shed said when her first book hit the bestseller list. "Let's just live comfortably but quietly." And so we did. Our modest 3-bedroom home in Los Angeles was pleasant but not extravagant. We drove reliable cars rather than flashy ones. We took nice vacations but nothing ostentatious. And all the while, Lucy's novels sold millions of copies worldwide, the royalties flowing into accounts that we rarely discussed even with each other. When Lucy received her diagnosis 13 months ago, we both knew what it meant. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer left little room for hope. But Lucy faced it the way Shed faced everything in her life, with clarity, purpose, and a plan. "We need to talk about what happens after," Shed said one evening as we sat on our back porch. I had tried to change the subject, but she wouldn't allow it. "No, Nolan. We need to be practical. I need to know you'll be taken care of." That was the first night she told me about the Malibu property. She had purchased it 15 years earlier, with proceeds from her most successful book series, a beautiful oceanfront house that she had kept as her private writing retreat, visiting it 2 or 3 times a month while I thought she was at writers' retreats or publishing meetings. "I wanted a place that was just mine," she explained. "Not because I don't love you, but because sometimes a writer needs solitude to create. And now it's going to be your sanctuary after I'm gone." The memory of that conversation was still fresh in my mind when Craig showed up the morning after the funeral. He hadn't stayed after the service, claiming he had important business meetings. Now he was back, with more papers. "The nursing home needs some additional information," he said, not even bothering to ask how I was doing. "And we need to talk about your finances." At 68 years old, I probably looked exactly like what Craig thought I was. A grief-stricken old man with modest savings and a house that was now in his name. What he didn't know was that Lucy and I had noticed the small amounts of money that had gone missing over the years whenever Craig visited, the occasional valuables that disappeared, the loans that were never repaid. Lucy's voice echoed in my mind. "Don't confront him while I'm still here, Nolan. It would just cause pain for everyone. After I'm gone, you'll need to handle Craig carefully. He needs help, not just consequences." So I sat at the kitchen table, answering Craig's questions with vague responses, signing the occasional document without much protest. All the while, in the breast pocket of my suit jacket was a key to a safe deposit box containing everything I really needed to know: the deed to the Malibu house, account information for royalties that would continue to generate roughly $350,000 annually, and instructions from Lucy about how to proceed. "Dad, are you even listening?" Craig's voice cut through my thoughts. "I said we're going to need to sell most of this furniture. The nursing home rooms are small, and I don't have space to store all this junk." I nodded absently, playing the part of the defeated old man. But inside, I felt something I hadn't expected amid my grief, a flicker of anticipation for what would come next. Lucy had always been the master of plot twists in her novels. Now she had written one final story, and I was living it. "Whatever you think is best, son," I said quietly. The look of relief on his face would have been comical if it wasn't so heartbreaking. He thought he had won. He had no idea that the game had barely begun. 1 week later, I moved into Seaview Gardens, a nursing home that, despite its name, had neither a sea view nor gardens. My room was small but clean, a single bed, a dresser, a television mounted on the wall, and a small bathroom. Craig had allowed me to bring a few personal items, a photo album, my reading glasses, and some clothes. Everything else from our life together was being cataloged for an estate sale. Signed the listing agreement today, Craig announced during his brief visit to drop me off. Housing market is hot right now. Realtor thinks we can get $800,000 for the house. I nodded, knowing the actual market value was closer to $650,000. Craig was already counting the money he would make from overpricing the property. I wondered how desperate his financial situation must be. "That's nice," I said mildly, arranging my few possessions in the dresser drawers. Craig frowned at my lack of reaction. "Don't you care? That's your home of 40 years we're talking about." I looked up at him, allowing some genuine emotion to show through. "It's just a house now, Craig. Without your mother, it's just walls and a roof." Something flickered in his eyes, recognition perhaps, or a flash of shame, but it vanished quickly. "Well, the money will make sure you're comfortable here for a long time," he said, glancing at his watch. "I need to run. He'll check in on you next week sometime." After he left, I lay on the unfamiliar bed and stared at the ceiling. The grief hit me in waves, threatening to pull me under completely. Lucy should be here. We should be enjoying our retirement together, traveling to all the places Wed planned to visit. Instead, I was alone in a nursing home, pretending to be broke and helpless, while our son sold off our memories piece by piece. I must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I knew, a nurse was gently shaking my shoulder. "Mr. Harrison, there's a call for you at the desk." A Mr. Daniels. Richard Daniels was Lucy's attorney. I had been expecting his call. At the nurse's station, I took the phone and turned away for privacy. "Richard, thank you for calling. Nolan, I'm so sorry about Lucy. She was an extraordinary woman." "Yes," I said, the simple word carrying the weight of my loss. "I've been trying to reach you at home. I only just discovered you've been moved to a care facility. Is everything all right?" "As all right as it can be. My son thought it would be for the best." There was a pause on the line. "I see. Well, we need to meet. There are matters to discuss regarding Lucy's estate that cannot be handled over the phone." "I understand. Can you come here?" "That would be complicated. The documents I need to show you are sensitive. Is there any way you could meet me at my office? Or perhaps at the other property?" "The other property. The Malibu house that Craig knew nothing about. I think I could manage that. Tomorrow afternoon? Perfect. Shall I send a car for you?" "No," I said, suddenly aware of the nursing home staff within earshot. "You'll make my own arrangements." After hanging up, I approached the nurse's station again. "Excuse me, but is there a policy about residents leaving the facility temporarily? I have an appointment tomorrow." The charge nurse, a woman named Beverly with kind eyes and efficiency in her movements, looked up from her paperwork. "Of course, Mr. Harrison. You're not a prisoner here. As long as you sign out and let us know when you'll return, you're free to come and go as you please." "My son," he seemed to think. Beverly's expression shifted subtly. "Your son indicated you might be experiencing some cognitive decline, but our initial assessment doesn't support that. Unless a court has appointed a guardian for you, you're entitled to make your own decisions." I felt a surge of both anger and relief. Craig had tried to limit my freedom by suggesting I was mentally impaired, but for now at least, I still had autonomy. The next morning I called a taxi and gave the driver the address of the Malibu property. The drive took nearly an hour, most of it along the Pacific Coast Highway with its breathtaking ocean views. When we finally pulled up to the security gate, I entered the code Lucy had left for me, and we proceeded up the winding driveway. The house took my breath away. I'd seen photos, of course, but they didn't capture the reality of it, a modern 2-story masterpiece of glass and stone perched on a cliff overlooking a private stretch of beach. Through the massive windows, the Pacific Ocean stretched to the horizon, its deep blue waters sparkling in the afternoon sun. Richard was already waiting on the front steps, his silver Tesla parked in the circular driveway. He stood as my taxi approached, straightening his tie. "Welcome home, Nolan," he said as I emerged from the car. Or should I say, welcome to your new home. Inside, the house was even more impressive. Open and airy, with high ceilings and minimal but elegant furnishings. Lucy's taste had always been impeccable. Lucy left everything in order, Richard explained as we sat at a large dining table with papers spread between us. The house is fully paid for. Property taxes are substantial, of course. But given the royalty income, that won't be an issue. He pushed a folder toward me. These are the latest statements from her publisher. The new book that was released just before her death is selling extremely well. Combined with the backlist, you're looking at approximately $350,000 in annual income. Conservative estimate. I opened the folder with trembling hands. The numbers swam before my eyes. She also left this for you, Richard said, placing a small USB drive on the table. She said you'd know when to watch it. As Richard continued explaining the details of Lucy's estate, a notification sound came from his phone. He glanced at it, then looked up with a frown. This is odd. I've just received an email from a real estate agent asking for confirmation of property records for your Los Angeles home. They say they're preparing to list it for sale, but there's some confusion about a second mortgage taken out 3 months ago. I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. There is no second mortgage. Lucy and I owned the house outright for 20 years. Richard was already typing on his phone. Let me look into this. Something doesn't add up. By the time Richard left 2 hours later, Wed uncovered the first piece of the puzzle. Craig had somehow taken out a loan against the house before Lucy had even died, forging documents to make it happen. The amount? $150,000. Gambling debts, I said quietly, the pieces falling into place. Lucy suspected, but we never knew for sure. Richard placed a hand on my shoulder. Do you want me to take legal action? This is fraud, Nolan. I shook my head, remembering Lucy's words. He needs help, not just consequences. Not yet. Let me handle Craig my way. Lucy would have wanted me to try to help him first. After Richard left, I explored the house that was now mine, running my fingers along the spines of Lucy's books in her office, breathing in the faint scent of her perfume that somehow still lingered. On her desk was a framed photo of the two of us on our 40th anniversary, both of us laughing at some forgotten joke. I'm following the plan, Lucy, I whispered to the empty room. But I miss you. God, how I miss you. I returned to the nursing home before dinner, signing in at the front desk as if it'd just gone out for a pleasant afternoon drive. No one asked where I'd been or what I'd been doing. I was just another old man passing the time as best he could. That night, lying in the narrow nursing home bed, I thought about Craig and the path he'd chosen. I thought about Lucy and the plans she'd made to protect both me and, in her way, our son. And I thought about what would happen when those two forces finally collided. Weeks passed with no word from Craig. I settled into a routine at Seaview Gardens, eating bland meals in the communal dining room, participating half-heartedly in organized activities, and taking regular taxi rides to doctor's appointments that were actually visits to the Malibu house. During these escapes, I worked with Richard to implement Lucy's plan for managing her literary estate. The key is establishing you as the representative of Laura Blackwood's interests, without connecting you directly to Lucy, Richard explained during one of our meetings. Lucy set up a literary management corporation years ago. As the sole heir, you now control it, but your name doesn't appear on any public documents. We established a system whereby I would review contracts, approve marketing plans, and make decisions about Lucy's backlist all through the corporation, with Richard serving as the primary contact person. The publisher never needed to know that Laura Blackwood's grieving husband was the same Nolan Harrison whose son had just sold the family home out from under him. One Tuesday afternoon, as I returned from one such meeting, I found an unexpected visitor waiting in my room at Seaview. "Melissa," I said, genuinely surprised to see my daughter-in-law sitting in the visitor's chair. "This is a pleasant surprise." Craig's wife of 12 years stood as I entered. She was a tall, athletic woman in her early 40s with auburn hair and a directness I had always appreciated. Unlike Craig, she had attended Lucy's funeral and had wept genuine tears. "Nolan," she said, stepping forward to embrace me. "I'm sorry I haven't come sooner. Things have been complicated." I gestured for her to sit back down while I took a seat on the edge of my bed. "Complicated how?" Melissa took a deep breath, her hands twisting in her lap. "I'm leaving Craig. I've already filed for divorce. Though surprised by her directness, I can't say I was shocked by the news itself. Melissa and Craig had been having problems for years. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. May I ask why now? She looked up, her eyes filling with tears. The gambling has gotten worse. Much worse. He's in debt to people you don't want to be in debt to, Nolan. Dangerous people. And he's been lying to me for years about our finances. I nodded slowly, the picture becoming clearer. The house sale. Yes. He told me you wanted to sell it, that you suggested the nursing home because the house was too much for you to manage alone. That wasn't exactly how it happened, I said mildly. Melissa wiped at her eyes. I figured as much. Craig's been acting strange ever since Lucy died, almost manic. When I found the paperwork for the house listing and saw how much commission he's set to make, I started asking questions. He got angry, said I was being paranoid. She leaned forward, her expression earnest. Nolan, I came here to apologize. I should have checked on you sooner. I should have questioned what Craig was telling me. You have nothing to apologize for, I assured her. You're doing what you need to do to protect yourself. I understand that better than most. We talked for nearly an hour. Melissa explained that she had taken a leave of absence from her job as a physical therapist and was staying with her sister in Santa Barbara until the divorce proceedings were underway. She asked about how I was being treated at Seaview, expressing concern about the sparse furnishings of my room and the institutional feel of the place. I found myself wanting to tell her everything about the Malibu house, the royalties, Lucy's plan, but something held me back. I needed to be certain who I could trust. Did Craig ever mention anything about Lucy's writing career? I asked casually. About her income from her books? Melissa looked confused. Lucy wrote as a hobby, didn't she? Craig always said she dabbled in mysteries but never published anything. The depth of Craig's deception stunned me. He had known about his mother's career, had even attended book signings with us when he was younger, but had apparently hidden this knowledge from his wife completely. Just curious, I said, forcing a smile. She did enjoy writing. As Melissa was preparing to leave, she paused at the door. One more thing you should know. Craig's been asking about Lucy's personal papers. He came to the house last week looking for her files, her computer, anything with passwords or account information. He seemed desperate. A chill ran through me. Did he find anything? She shook her head. I told him most of her things had already been packed up for the estate sale. But Nolan, be careful. I've never seen him like this. It's like he's hunting for something specific. After she left, I sat on my bed considering this new information. Craig was looking for evidence of Lucy's secret life as a best-selling author. Had he somehow discovered the truth? Or was he simply desperate for any assets he might have overlooked? Either way, I needed to accelerate my plans. I used the room phone to call Richard. We need to move forward with phase 2, I told him. Craig is getting suspicious. 2 days later, I received an official-looking letter at Seaview. The nursing home administrator, a serious man named Walter Jenkins, called me into his office when it arrived. Mr. Harrison, we've received correspondence from your son's attorney, he said, sliding the letter across his desk. He's petitioning for conservatorship, citing concerns about your cognitive capacity and ability to manage your own affairs. I had expected something like this, but the reality of it still hit hard. My own son was trying to have me declared incompetent. I see, I said, keeping my voice steady. And what does that mean for me, exactly? If granted, it would give your son legal authority to make all financial and medical decisions on your behalf, Walter explained. However, such petitions require substantial evidence and evaluation by court-appointed experts. He leaned forward, lowering his voice slightly. Mr. Harrison, I've been running this facility for 17 years. I've seen families do this when their intentions are pure concern for an elderly parent who truly cannot care for themselves. And I've seen families do this when their intentions are less honorable. He studied me carefully. In the month you've been with us, our staff has observed no signs of cognitive impairment or inability to manage your affairs. In fact, you're one of our most independent and clear-headed residents. Thank you for that assessment, I said. I appreciate your candor. Walter nodded. We will, of course, comply with any court orders. But until such time, You remain in full control of your own decisions. And if you'd like a recommendation for an attorney to contest this petition, I'd be happy to provide one." I smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude for this unexpected ally. "That won't be necessary. I already have an excellent attorney." That evening, alone in my room, I plugged the USB drive Richard had given me into the small laptop he'd purchased during one of my outings. Lucy's face appeared on the screen, recorded some months before her death. She looked tired, the cancer already taking its toll, but her eyes were as sharp and determined as ever. "Hello, my love," she said, her voice bringing tears to my eyes instantly. "If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you're following our plan. I'm so sorry I can't be there with you for this next chapter." She shifted slightly in her chair, a familiar gesture that made my heart ache with longing. "By now, you've probably discovered the extent of Craig's problems. The gambling, the lying, possibly even theft. I've watched it developing for years, and I blame myself partly for not confronting it sooner. We both wanted to believe the best of our son." She sighed, running a hand through her thinning hair. "But now it's time for the final act, Nolan. Craig needs to face reality, but with a safety net. That's why I've structured everything the way I have. The trust I've established will pay out to Craig only under specific conditions: sobriety, financial counseling, mental health treatment. He won't like it. He'll rage against it. But if he's ever going to heal, he needs both consequences and support." Lucy leaned closer to the camera, her expression intense. "When the time comes when Craig has discovered enough to confront you directly, you'll know it's time for the revelation scene. The one where all the mysteries are finally solved." She smiled then, the smile I had fallen in love with decades ago. "You were always the best part of my life, Nolan. Better than any character I could ever write. I trust you to finish this story the right way." The video ended, leaving me staring at a blank screen, tears streaming down my face. Lucy had always been the storyteller in our family. Now it was my turn to see her final narrative through to its conclusion. The next morning, I called Richard again. "I need you to set up a meeting," I told him. "Invite Craig's attorney as well. It's time for what Lucy called the revelation scene." I had been at Seaview Gardens for nearly 2 months when Craig finally appeared for his second visit. He looked terrible haggard, with dark circles under his eyes and clothes that hung loosely on his frame. The confident, borderline, arrogant son I had known had been replaced by a man clearly at the end of his rope. "The house sale fell through," he announced without preamble, dropping into the visitor's chair in my room. "Buyer backed out when their financing collapsed." I nodded sympathetically, though I knew the real reason. Richard had quietly contacted the buyers with information about the questionable loan Craig had taken out against the property. "That's unfortunate," I said. "I'm sure another buyer will come along soon." Craig ran his hands through his disheveled hair. "I don't have time for soon, Dad. I need money now. I wish I could help, but as you know, my Social Security barely covers this place," I said, watching his reaction carefully. His eyes narrowed. "You've been leaving the facility. The staff told me you take regular trips out, just getting some fresh air. The gardens here aren't much to speak of, despite the name." Craig leaned forward, a desperate edge to his voice. "Where do you go? Who do you meet with?" I maintained a calm exterior while my mind raced. He was fishing, looking for confirmation of suspicions he couldn't quite piece together. "Sometimes I just like to sit by the ocean and remember your mother," I said, which wasn't entirely untrue. At the mention of Lucy, Craig's expression changed subtly. Mom's papers were all missing when I went through the house. Her computer, her notebooks, everything. What happened to them? "I believe most of her personal items were boxed up for the estate sale," I said, echoing what Melissa had told him. "Why the sudden interest in your mother's writing?" Craig stood abruptly and began pacing the small room. "Don't play dumb, Dad. I found things. References to Laura Blackwood, correspondence with publishers." He stopped and faced me directly. "Mom was Laura Blackwood, wasn't she? The mystery writer. All those times she said she was at writing retreats or conferences, she was meeting with publishers, doing book signings." I kept my expression neutral. "What makes you think that?" "I found a royalty statement," he said triumphantly. "In an old email account of hers I managed to access over $300,000 last year alone, and mentions of properties plural." "Where is it, Dad? Where's the money?" Where's the other property? This was the moment I'd been preparing for, but I still needed to be careful. Craig was volatile, desperate. You're not well, son, I said gently. Melissa told me about the gambling, the debts. Let me help you. His face contorted with anger. Help me? You've been hiding millions from me while I'm about to get my kneecaps broken by people who don't take IOUs. Some father you are. Craig, I said firmly. Sit down. Something in my tone must have cut through his anger. He sat, though his body remained tense, ready to spring back up at any moment. I have a proposal, I said. A meeting. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Everything will be explained then. What kind of meeting? With who? With Richard Daniels, your mother's attorney. And I suggest you bring your own legal representation. Craig's eyes narrowed. So, there is something. I knew it. He stood again. I don't need a meeting. Just tell me where the money is, where this other property is. I shook my head. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Richard's office downtown. That's the only way this happens. Craig stared at me, as if seeing me clearly for the first time in years. The frail, compliant father figure he thought he'd been manipulating was gone, replaced by something he didn't quite recognize. Fine, he snapped. Tomorrow, after he stormed out, I called Beverly at the nurse's station. I need to check out for a few days, I told her. Personal business. Of course, Mr. Harrison, she said. Should I be expecting you back? I thought about the Malibu house waiting for me, its ocean views and peaceful solitude. I'm not entirely sure, I admitted. But I'll let you know. Walter, the administrator, stopped by as I was packing the few belongings I had. I hear you're leaving us, he said, leaning against the doorframe. Temporarily, I said. I have some family matters to resolve. He nodded. Your son's petition for conservatorship has been scheduled for a hearing next week. Just so you're aware. Thank you for telling me, I said, closing my small suitcase. I don't think that hearing will be necessary after tomorrow. Walter smiled. I had a feeling. You never really needed to be here, did you, Mr. Harrison? Let's just say I needed to give the impression that I did, I replied. And I appreciate the role you and your staff played, knowingly or not. I checked out of Seaview Gardens that afternoon and took a taxi directly to the Malibu house. The sun was setting over the Pacific as I arrived, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Standing on the deck overlooking the ocean, I felt Lucy's presence strongly. Tomorrow's the big scene, I said aloud. The one where all is revealed. I could almost hear her voice in the crash of the waves below. Make it count, Nolan. Make it mean something. That night, I slept in our bed, the one Lucy had chosen for this house but had shared with me only in her dreams for our future. Tomorrow would bring the confrontation she had planned for, the one that might save our son or lose him forever. Richard's office occupied the top floor of a sleek downtown building with views of the Los Angeles skyline. I arrived an hour early to review our strategy and prepare myself emotionally for what was to come. Richard had arranged everything according to Lucy's instructions, down to the seating arrangement in the conference room and the refreshments available. Are you ready for this? He asked as we waited. It could get ugly. Lucy believed this was the only way, I said, straightening my tie. I had dressed carefully that morning in a tailored suit that Lucy had purchased for me years ago, and I trust her judgment, even now. At precisely 2 o'clock, Craig arrived with a sharp-faced woman in an expensive suit who introduced herself as Andrea Winters, his attorney. Craig looked marginally better than he had the day before, freshly shaved and in clean clothes, but the desperate energy still radiated from him. Let's skip the pleasantries, Craig said as soon as we were all seated. We know why we're here. My father has been concealing assets that should rightfully be part of my mother's estate. Andrea placed a restraining hand on his arm. What my client means is that we have reason to believe Mrs. Harrison may have had additional assets that haven't been properly disclosed. Richard cleared his throat. Before we proceed, I need to clarify something. I represent both the estate of Lucy Harrison and Mr. Nolan Harrison personally. Everything I'm about to disclose has been handled in full compliance with the law. He opened a folder on the table. Lucy Harrison, as you recently discovered, Craig published extremely successful mystery novels under the pen name Laura Blackwood. This was not a secret from her husband. but it was information she chose to keep private from most people, including you, for reasons that will become clear. Richard slid a document across the table. This is the most recent royalty statement. As you can see, the income from her literary estate amounts to approximately $350,000 annually. This fluctuates, of course, depending on sales, but with her backlist and posthumous publications already in the pipeline, this income stream is expected to continue for the foreseeable future. Craig stared at the numbers, his eyes widening. Andrea studied the document with a professional's detachment. Additionally, Richard continued, Lucy owned a property in Malibu, purchased 15 years ago, as a writing retreat. He slid another document across the table, this one showing the deed and current market valuation of the beach house. Conservative estimate places its value at $4.5 million. Craig looked up from the papers, his face flushed with anger. All this time you two were sitting on millions while you what? I interrupted quietly. While you stole small amounts from our home whenever you visited? While you forged documents to take out a fraudulent loan against our Los Angeles house? While you gambled away your own family's security? Craig flinched as if I'd struck him. You knew? About the loan? We've known about your gambling for years, Craig, I said, my voice gentle but firm. Your mother and I watched you taking money, making excuses, disappearing for days at a time. We hoped you would come to us for help, but you never did. I nodded to Richard, who pressed a button on a remote control. The large screen on the wall came to life, showing Lucy's face, the same video I had watched in my nursing home room. Craig gasped audibly. Hello, Craig, Lucy said from beyond the grave. If you're watching this, then your father has followed my instructions, and you've discovered enough of the truth to force this meeting. She adjusted her position, looking directly into the camera, as if she could see through it to where her son now sat. I need to explain some things. First, why I kept my writing career separate from our family life. The simple answer is privacy. Success brings attention, and attention brings scrutiny. I wanted us to live normal lives, not as the family of Laura Blackwood. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But there was another reason, one that became more important as the years passed. I watched you struggling, Craig. The gambling, the lies, the financial troubles you tried to hide. If you had known about my success, about the money, I feared it would only fuel your addiction. So I kept it separate, hoping you would find your own path. Lucy's eyes filled with tears, and I heard Craig make a small sound beside me. I love you, son. Never doubt that. And because I love you, I can't simply leave you a fortune that might destroy you. Nor can I cut you out entirely, because you're my child, and I believe in second chances. She straightened, her expression becoming more composed. That's why I've established the Harrison Family Trust. It contains provisions for your future, Craig. The trust will immediately pay off your gambling debt's current balance as of my death to ensure your physical safety. But after that, access to funds will be contingent on 3 conditions. 1, you must complete a rehabilitation program for gambling addiction. 2, you must maintain regular sessions with both a therapist and a financial counselor. And 3, you must demonstrate 6 months of sobriety and financial responsibility. Craig was completely still now, his eyes fixed on his mother's image. If you meet these conditions, the trust will provide you with quarterly disbursements sufficient for a comfortable life. Not extravagant, but secure. Additionally, funds will be available for legitimate business ventures, education, and health care for you and your family. Lucy leaned forward, her gaze intense. This isn't punishment, Craig. It's the only way I could think to give you what you truly need. A chance to heal, to rebuild, to become the man I know you can be. She sat back, a gentle smile crossing her face. As for your father, the Malibu house and the management of my literary estate passed to him without restriction. He has earned that security after standing by me through everything, including the painful process of watching you struggle without intervening as I asked him not to. Lucy's image looked down briefly, then back up, her eyes somehow finding mine through the screen. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there to see how this story ends, but I've given it the best structure I could, a framework for healing and redemption. The rest is up to you both. The screen went dark, and silence filled the conference room. I turned to look at Craig and was startled to see tears streaming down his face. He made no move to wipe them away. "All this time," he whispered. "She knew. You both knew." Andrea, Craig's attorney, looked uncomfortable, clearly not prepared for the emotional turn the meeting had taken. "Perhaps we should take a short break to process this information," she suggested. Richard nodded and stood. "There's a private room next door if you'd like some space, Craig." Craig didn't move, his eyes fixed on the now blank screen. "Dad," he said finally, turning to me. Did she know about the people I owe money to? How bad it is?" I nodded. "Lucy had a private investigator look into it about a year ago, when she received her diagnosis. She wanted to understand exactly what we were dealing with. They're not patient people," Craig said, his voice barely audible. "They've given me until the end of the week." Richard intervened smoothly. "The trust has provisions for this specific situation. We can have funds transferred to settle those debts by tomorrow morning, provided you sign the acceptance documents for the trust terms." Craig looked at me, really looked at me, for what felt like the first time in years. "And what about you? After everything I've done stealing from you, trying to take your house, dumping you in that nursing home, you're just going to help me?" I reached across the table and took my son's hand. "You're my child, Craig. Lucy's child. We both made mistakes. Lucy by keeping secrets she thought would protect you. Me by enabling behaviors I should have confronted. And you by trying to solve your problems alone." I squeezed his hand. "But family means second chances. It means believing someone can change, even when the evidence suggests otherwise. Your mother believed that until the day she died. And so do I." Craig broke down then, sobs racking his body. Andrea, clearly out of her element, excused herself tactfully. Richard followed, leaving father and son alone in the conference room. "I don't deserve this," Craig said when he could finally speak again. "Any of it. It's not about deserving," I told him. "It's about healing, about moving forward." As we sat there, I felt something shift between us. The first fragile foundation of a bridge across the chasm that had grown over years of secrets and lies. We had a long way to go, but Lucy had given us the blueprint. Now it was up to us to build it together. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of activity. Craig signed the trust documents, and Richard immediately set the machinery in motion to pay off the dangerous people Craig owed. I insisted on accompanying the trust representative when the payments were made, wanting to ensure the matter was truly settled. We met them in a nondescript office building in a part of town I rarely visited. The men were exactly as I'd imagined them, expensively dressed with cold eyes that evaluated everything in terms of profit and loss. They counted the money without comment, made a phone call, and then nodded to Craig. "We're square," one of them said simply. "Don't come looking for credit again." Craig, pale but composed, nodded. "I understand. Thank you for your patience." As we left, I could feel the weight lifting from Craig's shoulders. Not all of it, the burden of addiction and the wreckage it had created, would take much longer to address. But the immediate threat to his safety was gone. "What now?" he asked as we stood on the sidewalk outside. "Now you check into the rehabilitation facility Richard arranged," I said. 30 days inpatient, followed by outpatient therapy and regular attendance at support groups. It's all been arranged, as per your mother's instructions." Craig looked like he might argue, but then his shoulders slumped in resignation. "She really did think of everything, didn't she?" "Lucy was always good at plotting," I said, allowing myself a small smile. "It's what made her books so compelling." Later that day, I drove Craig to Oakwood Recovery Center, a discreet facility tucked into the hills north of the city. As we pulled up to the entrance, he turned to me with uncertainty in his eyes. Will you come visit me while I'm here?" The question caught me off guard. After years of distance and deception between us, this small request for connection felt monumental. "Of course I will," I promised. "Every week." Craig nodded, then hesitated before getting out of the car. I tried to call Melissa, to tell her what's happening. She didn't pick up. "Give her time," I advised. "Focus on your recovery first. The rest will follow when it's meant to." As I watched my son walk through the doors of the rehabilitation center, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: grief for everything we'd lost, hope for what might be rebuilt, and a profound sense that Lucy was somehow witnessing this moment, nodding her approval from wherever she was now. I returned to the Malibu house alone, stopping at Seaview Gardens, on the way to formally check out and thank the staff who had unknowingly played their parts in Lucy's elaborate plan. Walter shook my hand with a knowing smile. "I suspected there was more to your story," he said. "I hope things worked out as you intended." "They're working out as Lucy intended," I corrected him gently. "I'm just following her lead, as I often did in life." That evening, I sat on the deck of the Malibu house, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. For the first time since Lucy's death, I felt a sense of peace settling over me. There was still much to be done finalizing the transition of the Los Angeles house ownership back to me, setting up the systems to manage Lucy's literary legacy, monitoring Craig's progress in rehabilitation, but the framework was in place. The story arcs converging toward resolution, just as Lucy had planned. I took out the last item from the safe deposit box, a sealed envelope with my name written in Lucy's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper, not a letter, as I had expected, but the first page of a manuscript titled "The Last Chapter." Below the title, a dedication, "For Nolan, who always believed in happy endings." I clutched the page to my chest and wept not from grief this time, but from gratitude for the extraordinary woman who had loved me enough to write one final story to guide me through a world without her. The next morning, Richard called with news. "Craig's attorney has officially withdrawn the petition for conservatorship," he reported, "and I've started the process to unwind the fraudulent loan against the Los Angeles property. It may take some time, but we'll get it sorted." "Thank you, Richard," I said, "for everything. Lucy chose well when she selected you as her attorney." "Lucy was special," he said, a note of admiration in his voice. "In all my years of practice, I've never worked with anyone quite like her. Most people's estate plans are about distributing assets. Hers was about healing a family." After we hung up, I spent the day exploring the house that was now truly my home, discovering the small touches that revealed Lucy's presence. A collection of her favorite books in the library, photographs from our life together tastefully displayed throughout the rooms, even my preferred brand of coffee in the pantry. She had prepared this place as a sanctuary for me, a place where I could feel her presence while learning to live without her. In her office, I found a stack of notebooks filled with her handwriting outlines for novels she would never write, character sketches, plot ideas. On top of the stack was a note, "For Nolan's eyes only. Perhaps you'll find a story here worth telling." I ran my fingers over her writing, remembering how she would sit for hours crafting her intricate mysteries, her brow furrowed in concentration. Would I ever feel ready to read these private thoughts, these stories that existed only in her imagination? Not yet, I decided. But someday. 1 week later, I visited Craig at Oakwood for the first time. He looked different already, clearer-eyed, less hunted. We sat in the visiting area, initially awkward with each other, struggling to find common ground after everything that had happened. "The counselors here are good," Craig offered. "They don't judge. They just listen and then reflect back what they hear in ways that make you think." "Your mother would have approved," I said. "She was a great believer in the power of perspective shifts. It's what made her mysteries work, the ability to see the same events from multiple angles." Craig nodded, a flicker of genuine interest crossing his face. "I've actually been thinking a lot about Mom's books. I read a few of them years ago, before I knew she was Laura Blackwood." "You never mentioned that," I said, surprised. I didn't want her to know. It felt weird, like I was invading her privacy somehow. He gave a sad smile. Ironic, considering how much of her privacy I actually invaded in other ways. "She would have been pleased to know you read her work," I told him. "She was proud of those books, even if she kept them separate from her identity as your mother." "Do you think?" Craig hesitated. "Do you think, when I get out of here, you could show me her office? The place where she wrote?" Something warm unfurled in my chest. "I'd like that very much." As I was preparing to leave, Craig stopped me with a hand on my arm. "Dad, there's something I need to say." He took a deep breath. "I'm sorry. For everything. The stealing, the lying, trying to put you in a home. All of it." The words were simple, but I could see what they cost him: the admission of guilt, the acknowledgement of harm done. "I know, son," I said gently, "and I forgive you. Your mother did too. She just wanted you to have the chance to forgive yourself." On the drive back to Malibu, I found myself taking the long route, following the Pacific Coast Highway as it wound along the ocean. The sky was a brilliant blue, the water sparkling beneath it. Lucy had loved this drive, often saying it cleared her mind when she was stuck on a plot point. "It's working, Lucy," I said aloud, as if she were sitting beside me. "Your plan is working. He's trying, really trying." And somewhere in the crash of the waves against the shore, in the cry of the seagulls overhead, in the warm breeze coming through the open car window, I could almost hear her response. "Keep going, Nolan. The story isn't over yet." 6 months later, I stood on the deck of the Malibu house, watching a small gathering of people on the beach below. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sand as Craig, now 180 days sober, tossed a frisbee to a golden retriever puppy named Story, a recent adoption that had been his first major decision since completing rehabilitation. Melissa stood nearby, laughing as the energetic dog raced in circles before finally returning the frisbee to Craig. Their reconciliation had been gradual and cautious, beginning with joint therapy sessions 3 months into Craig's recovery program and progressing to careful rebuilding of trust. They weren't living together yet, but they were dating again, starting fresh, as Melissa put it. Richard and his wife Susan had joined us for this small celebration of Craig's 6-month sobriety milestone, as had Beverly from Seaview Gardens, who had become a friend and occasional dinner companion. It wasn't a large gathering, but it felt right, meaningful, and intimate, the kind of gathering Lucy would have approved of. "Penny, for your thoughts," said a voice beside me. I turned to find Craig, slightly out of breath from playing with the dog, his face tanned and healthy-looking. "Just thinking about how much your mother would have loved this," I said honestly. Craig nodded, his expression reflective. "I think about that a lot. What she would think of the choices I'm making now. She'd be proud," I assured him. "She always believed you could find your way back." We stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching as Melissa threw a stick for Story, who bounded after it with limitless enthusiasm. "The trust disbursement came through yesterday," Craig said. "First quarterly payment since I met all the conditions." "I know," I replied. Richard had informed me as the trust's overseer. Though I had no direct control over its management, Lucy had set it up that way intentionally, to remove any potential conflicts between us. "It's strange," Craig continued. 6 months ago, I would have seen that money as nothing but gambling opportunity. Now, all I can think about is setting up an emergency fund, putting some away for retirement, maybe taking a course in financial planning. The counseling seems to be working then," I observed with a smile. Craig laughed. "Yeah, 3 sessions a week will do that to you." His expression grew more serious. "But it's not just the counseling. It's knowing where I was, what I almost lost, what I did lose." He glanced toward Melissa, who was now sitting on a beach towel with Susan, deep in conversation. "I'm still making amends," he said quietly. "Still have a lot of trust to rebuild. But for the first time in years, I feel like I'm standing on solid ground." I placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling the strength there that had been absent 6 months ago. "That's all your mother and I ever wanted for you." Later, as the sun began to set, we gathered around a small bonfire on the beach. Richard had brought champagne for the non-recovering attendees and sparkling cider for Craig. As we toasted his 6 months of sobriety, I felt a wave of gratitude so powerful it nearly overwhelmed me. "I'd like to say something," Craig announced after the toast. He stood, looking slightly uncomfortable but determined. "I wouldn't be here today, if not for an extraordinary act of love and foresight from my mother." He looked around the small circle, his gaze lingering on each face before continuing. "Most people, when faced with the kind of betrayal and deception I put my parents through, would have cut me off completely, or just given me money without conditions, which honestly would have killed me eventually." Craig's voice grew husky with emotion. "But my mother understood something profound, that people sometimes need structures to help them change, frameworks that both support and challenge them. She designed a path that I could follow back to myself, back to being the person she always believed I could be." He turned to me, eyes bright with unshed tears. and my father had the courage and compassion to implement that plan, even after everything I'd done. That kind of love, I don't know if I deserve it, but I promise I won't waste it. There wasn't a dry eye in our small gathering. Melissa stood and took Craig's hand, a gesture of solidarity that spoke volumes about the progress they'd made. As night fell and our guests began to depart, I found myself drawn back to Lucy's office. I had spent more and more time there in recent months, reading through her notes, familiarizing myself with the business side of her literary estate, and occasionally, when the silence of the house became too much, simply sitting in her chair and imagining her presence. Tonight, I went to the desk drawer where I had placed the manuscript page she had left me the last chapter, with its dedication to me. For 6 months, it had remained alone in the drawer, untouched. But now, feeling a sense of completion, of cycles ending and beginning, I took it out and placed it on the desk. From another drawer, I removed a fresh notebook and a pen. The blank page stared up at me, intimidating yet somehow inviting. Lucy had always said that every ending contained the seeds of a new beginning. Perhaps it was time to see what might grow from the story she had started. I began to write, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. This isn't the story I expected to tell. It's not about loss, though loss is where it begins. It's not about betrayal, though betrayal is part of its journey. It's a story about second chances, about the extraordinary complexity of family love, and about how sometimes the people who know us best leave us maps to find our way when they can no longer walk beside us. The words came slowly but steadily, my unpracticed hand cramping slightly as I filled page after page. I wrote until the distant sound of the front door opening broke my concentration. Craig had returned from walking Richard and Susan to their car. "Dad?" he called. "Everything okay?" I set down the pen and went to greet him, feeling lighter somehow. "Everything's fine. Just working on a project." "Mom's books?" he asked. We had been discussing the management of her literary estate, and Craig had shown genuine interest in learning about that side of his mother's life. "Something new, actually," I said. "Something that's just beginning." Later that night, after Craig and Melissa had gone back to their respective homes and the house was quiet again, I returned to Lucy's office. The notebook lay open on the desk, the first chapter of whatever this new story might become, waiting to be continued. Next to it was another object I had placed there earlier, a small wooden box containing Lucy's wedding ring, which I had kept when she died, unable to bear the thought of it being buried with her. I opened the box now and took out the ring, its gold band catching the light from the desk lamp. "I'm keeping my promise, Lucy," I said to the empty room. "I followed your plan. I helped him find his way back. Our story didn't end the way we hoped, with us growing old together. But the chapters since you've been gone, I think you would approve of how they're unfolding." I slipped the ring onto my pinky finger, the closest it would fit, and returned to the notebook. Outside, the waves crashed against the shore in their eternal rhythm. Inside, in this sanctuary Lucy had created, I continued the story she had begun our story, with its unexpected plot twists and characters who defied expectations. A story of loss and redemption, of secrets revealed and healing begun. A story still being written, one page at a time. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between enabling someone you love or setting boundaries that might help them grow? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you or made you think differently about family relationships, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories that explore the complexity of human connections. And if you know someone who might benefit from this message of hope and second chances, please share it with them. Thank you for listening to this journey through grief, deception, and ultimately healing. Wishing you wisdom and compassion in all your family relationships.